connection issues with the speaker.
Good afternoon, Toby.
Fantastic, Yimika. Okay.
Yeah, I only just got your forward at 13:59, 3 minutes ago. I didn't get any other message or email with dialing details, but I just saw what you forwarded to me.
All right,
So
we're already live.
Okay.
And I will just do a quick introduction since we're already behind time. I just hope that the delegates have had an opportunity to go through your profile, which has been circulated. But I'll just do a quick introduction. So, distinguished panelists and delegates, it is my pleasure once again today to welcome you to today's session of the New Wigs Hand-Holding series. Our speaker for today is someone that I presume some of you already know, but if you don't know, I'm sure you will know her in time. Her name is Yimika Adesola. Yimika is the founder of Legally Engaged, a first of its kind career center that provides employment and employability solutions in the legal profession. She's a corporate lawyer and human resource professional. She has successfully spearheaded previously unavailable initiatives to train young lawyers in soft skills and technical areas of law, place lawyers in various jobs across Africa, and provide career coaching, guidance, and mentoring to thousands of Nigerian lawyers and law students. Yimika has had stints at some of the largest law firms in the world, where she was exposed to the best practice in law practice, management, and operations. She speaks and delivers training programs on a wide range of issues at continental level. In her professional legal career, Yimika has advised on an assortment of sophisticated international and Nigerian clients on various areas of law, including mergers, acquisitions, capital markets, fintech, employment, and compliance. She currently devotes her time to learning and teaching the human in human resources. It is my pleasure this afternoon to introduce you to Yimika, and I'm sure you will enjoy today's session. Yimika, and her session topic is getting started in the legal profession. So Yimika, you go.
Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to fellow panelists. Thank you very much for having me on this session to the Nigerian Bar Association. Thank you for the invitation. I'm honored. Welcome everyone on this session. Before I get started, I understand that it's a session for new wigs, but I just want to get some clarity. Do we have only new wigs on the call, on the session, so that I know what I'm bearing in mind, how I'm tackling things? Strictly new wigs, or are there a few people who have been called slightly earlier?
There are quite a number of people who have been called slightly earlier or much earlier.
Oh, okay.
Quite a number of people have said that they've classed themselves as new wigs. They said they lost the opportunity of getting this training when they were called, and they don't mind getting the training. But just treat all of us as new wigs, including myself.
Okay, so no problem at all. So I will share my screen because I have a presentation, if that's okay. Go ahead to do that. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, yes, we can see your screen, Yimika.
Okay, so my name is Yimika, like has already been mentioned, and I run Legally Engaged. I'm primarily a lawyer. I'm firstly a lawyer. And I started Legally Engaged because of my experience at law school. So I was at the Nigerian Law School. We're wrapping up, and I wanted to know, where can I work? What are the next steps? What are the law firms out there? Which ones are the ones that are considered good? Which ones are the ones that I might want to avoid? And I found that largely this information was not. I mean, by the time I was called to bar, I think it's fair to say that the internet was fairly common, very commonplace. So I thought that a quick Google search and I should be able to get good information to give me some kind of insight as to what I might find interesting. The only thing that I knew, the only thing that I had was, after my chamber attachments, personal preference, no diss, I said, I don't think I'm ever going to step into a Nigerian courtroom. So that was the only information, not chamber attachment, sorry, court attachment. After that, I said, this thing, I don't know, it's not for me. So we can cross out litigation, but other than litigation, because I don't know if that's the experience of many people here, but when you're in university, even as at law school, you do corporate law, but you still kind of have in your mind that litigation is the bulk of what legal practice has to offer you. So I thought to myself, well, I've seen what this litigation looks like. I don't think it's something that I personally am going to enjoy doing or I'm going to be very good at. So what else is there for me? And I tried to find out. I couldn't get the information that I needed. So I thought to myself, you know what, one day I'm going to do something. Maybe when I get into the profession, I don't know how many people say these things. I know my friends are like, that's what you say. Once you start making money now, you forget. I was like, no, don't worry, watch me. I'm going to get into the profession and I'm going to find something that can provide information for people who will be in the shoes that I am today in the future. Give them some insight as to what's out there, how to navigate the profession, how do I even apply to a law firm. I didn't really know much other than, okay, if I know somebody here, the law firm I did my chamber attachments, I can go back there and ask. If I know somebody in this firm, in that firm, if I ask my parents, if I do this, if I do that. I didn't really know of many options to actually follow through a law firm's recruitment process again then. And so I think 4 years later, 4 years after my call, I finally remembered the promise that I made many years ago, and I started Legally Engaged. So Legally Engaged does two things. We're law firm facing. So we face law firms, organizations, and also lawyer facing. So with the law firms, we offer consulting, HR consulting, which includes recruitment, which is the bulk of the HR consulting actually. And for the lawyers, we offer training, coaching, and mentoring. So I have been doing that for the last 6 years, actually. So once again, thank you for having me. I'm going to focus the bulk of my presentation on entering the legal job market, which really is finding a job, applying for the job, securing the job, and maybe a little bit on doing well at the job. But I think that's something that Kelechi will speak to a little more. So I've titled this Ace in the Recruitment Process. And we're going to talk through, it's an outline of what we're going to talk through today. Job applications mostly, and interviews, self-assessment, looking for the job, applying for the job, the tools that you need, doing your CV, your cover letter, following up, and then the interview portion of the session is going to be a little briefer than the job application session. I should just mention that when I typically run this session, job applications and interviews, we tend to do over 2 days, about 4 to 6 hours on each day. So you're going to have to bear with me because because of the time that we have, I would be doing a bit of skipping, but I think I've identified the places that I think attention needs to be put, and I'm going to try my best to do justice to those portions. So I've given you a brief overview of myself and how I started Legally Engaged. So the first step when you are about to embark on anything really, not just a job hunt, is to assess yourself. I find that a lot of young lawyers, and please permit me if I speak a little too directly. It's not my intention to offend anyone. It's not my intention to sound funny. I'm just going to speak it like I've seen it over the last 6 years. I find that a lot of young lawyers kind of go into the profession, like they just go. It's like, okay, I'm now a lawyer. Next thing for me to do is to get a job. And anyone that I find, as they say, anywhere belefis, anyone that works out, I just go in there and I start working. But today I'm speaking to two categories of people. The first one is people who want a good job. So you don't want any job. You don't want whatever you are offered. You want a good job. You've worked hard at university, you've worked hard at law school, and you think, you know what, I should be I should be compensated for that. I should be rewarded for that. I have a lot to offer. I want a good job. That's the first category of people. The second category of people are people that want to actually enjoy job satisfaction. Because it's one thing to say, I want a good job, I've gotten a good job, but you haven't really thought during the application process, is this a good job for me? Will I enjoy this job? Will I have job satisfaction? Will I be able to give my best to my employer? So those are the types of people who need to ask themselves certain questions before embarking on the recruitment process. And I have 3 questions here. The first one is, where am I now? The second one is, what roles am I suited for? And the third role is, what roles do I want? The third question, rather, is, what kind of roles do I want? So the first question, where am I now? In fact, all of them are important, like I've already said, both in the short term and in the long term. Short term, so I know the kind of job I want, I apply, I get it. But in the long term, so that I can actually go on to enjoy this job that I have taken. And let me give a quick distinction between the last two. What roles am I suited for and what roles do I want? It might be obvious, but I want to speak to that a little bit more. It's one thing to say, I want this kind of law firm, or I want to work in-house, I like this, it looks glamorous, this and that. But it's another thing to actually be the person that they are looking for. So you're looking for that employer, but are you the person that that employer is looking for? So with where am I now? With many new wigs, I have just finished at the Nigerian Law School. I've done my university degree. I finished at Nigerian Law School, and really that's where I am now. For somebody who is more experienced, it may be a bit more colorful. Well, I finished at Nigerian Law School 5, 10, 3, 4 years ago. I worked at such and such law firm first, and I moved in-house and I moved back to a law firm. But I would ask that everyone actually pause and ask yourself, like, where am I now? What have I done up till now in my career? That's the first question. Then the second question is, what kind of jobs am I suited for? It might initially sound obvious that it's anywhere they're looking for a lawyer, that is where I'm suitable for. But like I said, we are not the type to take any job that's thrown at us. We want to actually be intentional about our careers. So yes, there are the more obvious things like my skills, my course of study. Generally speaking, I studied law. I would like a job as a lawyer. But there are certain other little things that one needs to consider. I've given my personal example. After court attachment, I said, I do not think I'm suitable for a job as a litigation associate. Other people might have similar experiences or not, but even things like your personal circumstances, am I location bound in the kind of job that I can take? Are there any reasons why I need to take a job with a minimum salary, with minimum remuneration? Do I have considerations that other people might not have? Am I competing with a 23-year-old graduate, whereas I'm a 32-year-old with 3 young boys? So these type of things are what is going to influence the roles that you are able to take. Role that is good for Jack might not necessarily be good for Jill. So it's a good thing to consider your skills, your course of study, your interest, your personal values. Some people might say, I can't work in this kind of industry, maybe because of my religious beliefs. I can't work in that kind of industry. Your personal circumstances, consider all of this to know what you're actually suitable for. And then lastly, what do I actually want? This one is most important in the long run. In the short run, if it's just take something, there's no work outside, whatever I see, I take, fine. But if you're looking for the long term, and I think this would be more relevant, more relevant for people who are a little more qualified. It's, well, I've been there, done that. I'm in a job right now, so I'm not necessarily just looking for whoever will take me. This next step, I want to actually take a job that I know that I want. So there are different factors that one might consider. And I advise people to list out these factors and rank them. So what is must have? What is the bare minimum? What is acceptable? And what is perfect? So I'll give you an example. Let's use a very common one. Salary. Must have at the very minimum, maybe 150,000. If they're going to pay me less than that, they should not even bother me. That's the minimum. I can take 150,000 if there is also this. But what would be perfect for me is anything from 250,000 and above. Same thing with location. I would like something in Lagos. If I'm not able to get a big city as Lagos, I could consider one of the other big cities, such as Abuja and Port Harcourt. Again, you're thinking about the long term. We don't want to take a job because that's the job that's available. You find yourself in this job and you think, actually, this is not what I would have liked to do. This is not where I would like to be. So you consider things like the job role itself, the JD. Again, using my example, is this litigation or is it not? Is it corporate? Is this what I really want to do? You can consider training prospects. And I think that this is a very important one for young lawyers to consider. A lot of the time we think of trainings as, oh, I went for a formal training like this one with the MBA or with Legally Engaged. But even within the organization, if you can find out, please do. How much am I going to be exposed to? Is this somewhere where I will be essentially running clerical errands as a young lawyer? Or is this somewhere where they give me opportunity to prove myself? And as I prove myself, they give me more and more. I always say that you shouldn't go to school for 6, 5, 7 years to run clerical errands as a young lawyer. Personally, I am very opposed to it. And I would advise anybody who would ask me or who would listen to me to also run from that. I believe that even as a young lawyer, there are little tasks that you can be tested with again as you prove yourself to your employer, and you can grow and grow and grow within a law firm. So that brings me to another factor to consider in finding the job that you want. What are the growth prospects? This one might not be immediately obvious, but depending on the size of the organization, I typically tell people, look at the people who were called a few years before you working in that organization. So you were called in 2020, you want to go there, they're going to take you as an associate. Fine, of course, what else? But look at the person who was called in 2014. Are they still an associate? Look at the person who was called in 2016, in 2010. Those are the type of things that would give you an indication. Of course, when you look at it holistically, each person's career will be different, but look at it holistically. What are the growth prospects in this organization? Who are their partners? Do they embrace partners from the younger generation, or is it still the OG partners that are there? These are the type of things that you should be looking at when it comes to growth prospects in an organization. Culture, again, is another one that is not immediately obvious, but it's probably the most important one to consider if we're thinking about the long term. Again, like I said, what can you find out about how the place runs internally? If it's a small law firm, is it run at least with some type of structure? Or is it totally free, whatever the managing partner just feels like during a particular day, or whatever HR announces is what we do? Colleagues, size of the firm, the bonus, the remuneration, the location. I mean, this one really, it's you. That's why it's important to ask yourself the questions, where am I now? What are my personal circumstances? Because that's what would influence what kind of roles you want and what kind of roles you take. So again, with this third question, I would advise listing all the factors that are important to you. I've seen too many cases, firstly, of new wigs just taking a job because that's the job that's available, or of more experienced lawyers running from fire pan to fire. This place I am, things are too hard. I don't like this, I don't like that. And then you see something else and you quickly take it. It's very important to be strategic about one's career. I mean, we've heard all of these things said. Your job is probably where you spend the most amount of time. It's the biggest block of time on your calendar every week, week in, week out, month in, month out. So I think that it's something that's important enough that you actually look before you leap. So those are the questions that I would say for self-assessment. Where am I now? What kind of roles am I suited for? And what kind of roles do I want? Do I take questions as I go along, or would you prefer for me to just take everything at the end of the day, at the end of the session?
Yeah, I think you should take at the end of the session.
Okay.
I've asked delegates to throw in their questions in the Q&A box.
Okay.
We don't have any questions yet, but let's take questions at the end.
Okay, all right, no problem. So actually, before I move on to the next thing, with these last two questions, what often happens is that people find that there's some form of a disparity. So what kind of job do I want? Remuneration, I want 500,000. Location, Banana Island, you've listed everything. And then when you actually start to see the roles that you're suited for based on your experience, based on what you can actually offer an employer, you notice that there's a mismatch. Things are not really aligning. So what can one do then? The first thing I would say is don't worry. It's not the end of the world. While we've said that a job is where we spend the bulk of our time, is not the thing that defines us. So the first thing I would say is that don't worry, there are many jobs out there, and if one does the best that they can, I believe strongly that you will get something good. But what kind of steps can we take proactively? I would say write out what these shortcomings are. So let's say you've seen that you want to work with this big oil and gas company in Port Harcourt, and they have said that these are their requirements, these are what they want. Out of 10, you only have 3. So write out the 7, draw up a plan. What am I going to do to make sure that I'm better at such and such and such and such? Set timelines, continually assess yourself. But as far as making an immediate decision is concerned, there are 2 very obvious options. The first is to apply anyway. And the second is to take something smaller in the meantime and continue working towards your larger goal. And what I would advise really depends on the specific circumstance. But what I would always say to people is, as much as possible, avoid unnecessary idle time. So I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for a job. Is it that you haven't seen anything at all, or you just haven't seen what you would like? The way you would approach this, again, depends on where you are in your career. If you've worked 7, 8 years and you're like, you know what, I actually don't mind. I know many people who've done that, sitting at home for 6, 7 months until I find something that is good. I've been there, I've seen what there is, what they can offer me. And this time I actually want to look properly before I leave. That's fine. But for a new wig, you might not want to hang around at home too much. So take whatever you can, a little internship there, smaller job that is not your ideal job there, and continue to have your career goals at the back of your mind and work towards those. I've gotten some water. So now I'm going to be talking about the actual job application technique. So you've done all your self-assessment. Oh, fantastic. I've seen the kind of job I want. In fact, I've written it down. I know what the employer should offer me. Now I want to start to apply for a vacancy. So where can one find vacancies? I'm not going to spend too long on this because I think that it's pretty obvious, it's pretty known. Looking for a job, online, offline, both of them, either of them can work. With online, depending on the size of the organization, their website, or a job board, social media, even WhatsApp groups nowadays. There are many, many WhatsApp groups out there. And I think that anybody who is seriously looking for a job should seek out a lot of these legal law WhatsApp groups. Not even because vacancies are posted very often, but just rubbing minds with your colleagues, asking questions, seeking advice, that kind of thing. It's certainly very important to consider. So websites, social media, LinkedIn, job boards, WhatsApp groups, all of those come under my online category. Offline, I still know of a few people who do it the old-fashioned way and would actually walk from law firm to law firm or from company to company saying, is there a vacancy here? I'm looking for a job. I'd like to apply. But the more popular offline method nowadays is probably some form of word of mouth or networking, something that's come about by networking. You went to an event, you met somebody, you spoke to the partner in a law firm, or your friend just said, look, they're looking for people in my law firm. So just keep your ear on the ground, essentially. There's certain websites that you should follow the organization that you're interested in on social media. Just keep your eye out. Vacancies are being posted every day. As a recruiter, I always say that even though we say that there are a lot of people out of jobs, there are a lot of jobs, but that is a much bigger issue than we can even start to tackle today. So why is there a mismatch? But there are jobs out there. You can go hunting in any of these platforms that I've already talked about. So the next steps, I actually wanted to throw this open to everyone. So you have done your self-assessment, you've gone online, you have found some vacancies from one of these platforms. What would you say is the next step that you should take? Okay, can people unmute themselves? I'm not sure if earlier
No,
session.
because it's a webinar platform, you can't take that, but
Okay, so you can't.
they can drop on the chat box.
Oh
If you
wow,
ask
please, because I don't like speaking to myself. So what are the next steps after you found your vacancy? You've seen that this vacancy is what you're suited for and what you want. I guess you can just share with panelists if you're feeling shy about your answer. Okay, someone says apply, apply, apply. Any others? Prepare your resume and start sending. Make an application. Okay. Consider the location. So all of these are technically correct. But the immediate next step, and now I'm speaking like a lawyer, the immediate next step is to carry out some research on the organization. You know, we've been saying, look before you leap, look before you leap. So you've been doing something broader, you've asked yourself what you want, you've now come across something. Okay, is this organization actually suitable for me? What are they about? Who are their partners? Who are their staff? What kind of work do they do? Yes, I've seen now someone says research on the law firm. That is the next step that you can carry out. And the tools that you use to carry out this research are more or less the same as how you would even access the vacancy in the first place. The word of mouth, the social media, the company website, those are the same type of tools that you can use to ask questions and understand what the company does, what they can offer you, and in turn, what you can offer them. So yes, after that, the next thing we would do is to apply for the job. I'm not going to talk too much on cover letters because I know that that's not the case with everyone, but I find personally as a recruiter that they've become a little bit redundant. I don't know how many organizations still say that you need to have a formal cover letter. So I'll touch on it, but very briefly. But your CV is the main thing that you're going to use to apply. And I've put here that your CV is essentially a summary of your qualifications in a bid to demonstrate your suitability for the role. I wish I had actually highlighted that place that says in a bid to demonstrate your suitability for the role so that we can bear at the back of our minds, why am I actually preparing a CV? Am I preparing a CV and sending my CV because it's tradition, because that's how it's been done? Or is there something that they're actually looking to see on my CV? And that is your suitability for the role. A cover letter is just a letter introducing yourself to the hiring manager, introducing yourself to the hiring manager, summarizing your experiences, your goals, your expectations. So the CV. How many minutes do I have, please? Looks like I don't have a lot of time left.
You have another 15 minutes or so.
Wow, okay. So
if you want to stretch it, you can stretch it for about 20 minutes. I think we can live with that.
Okay, thank you. That would be very helpful. So the CV, I've just put on here the different portions of a CV, the different portions of a standard CV. The first one is, well, actually, before I go into that, I just want to make some points in general, since I have a bit of time, about a CV and preparing your CV. And the first one is that one needs to remember that a lot of the time, competition is fierce. I already kind of touched on that conundrum. Are there too little jobs, or are there too many lawyers, or is it that there's a mismatch? But whatever the case it is, whether it's quantity of lawyers that you're applying with, that you're contending with, or quality of lawyers, there's always some sort of competition that one is going to face. So this is relevant, again, like I said, for people who are actually looking for a good job. It's not just any job where I can do anything. I can do a shoddy CV, I can do anything, I can hand it in and they'll take me and I'll start working. Some of these things here might seem unnecessary to you. But for people who are looking to start out with a bang, or who've been working for some time and looking to really level up in their career, you need to remember that you get out what you put in. I don't know of any recruiter that's going to say, you know what, I looked at this person's CV, it was perfect, attention to detail, they gave me everything I needed, it was just too much, please, I don't want to take them. But it's very likely that you have a recruiter who says, oh, there was that little typo there, I'm not sure, this other guy he's better than this. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's better to overdo in most cases than to not do enough. And a lot of this also depends on the organization that you're applying to. Some organizations, bigger organizations who have larger clients who expect certain level of quality from them, they would also expect that level of quality from their lawyers as well. So the things that they're looking out for on CVs that come into their offices might be different from a smaller law firm or a smaller organization. And little drops make a mighty ocean. So that thing that you think is not important, I've had situations where we're shortlisting people for an interview, and there's so many CVs that it now has to be down to the littlest things. Again, this little typo here, they weren't very clear about what they did, they weren't very clear about this gap on their CV, so let's take this person. Little drops come together and make a mighty ocean. So again, better to overdo than to not have done enough. So the CV sections, you have your personal details, your education, candidate profile, work history, work experience, and miscellaneous. So the first one is your personal details. There's not a lot to say here. Just check that all the info is accurate, it's complete. I've had some situations where you've seen a CV, it's a solid CV, but one letter is missing, one number rather is missing in their phone number, and it's difficult to find a way to contact them, or the email address keeps bouncing back, or they don't even check their email address. So check that everything you have there, the info is complete, it's accurate, and it's up to date. If you've changed your phone number, you've gone to your CV to reflect it. A brief one about email address, and I'll give us a little take-home assignment on that, is that you should have a professional email address. So if you're a new wig or even a more senior lawyer and your email address is still something like sexyamaka@gmail.com, it's not for your CV. If your email address is still anything really but some iteration of your first name and your second name, it's not a very professional email address. And again, depending on the sophistication of the kind of organization that you're looking to apply to, it comes off as wrong. So just a little assignment for anybody who doesn't. Everybody should have an email address that is, I'll use my name as an example, yimika@adeshola@gmail.com, yimika.adeshola@gmail.com. Why Adeshola@gmail? Why does Adeshola? You get the drift. That's what your email address should be. I think that has become standard. That's standard, and that's what's acceptable now in the profession. And this is even beyond jobs. This is, you're working with clients. You don't want to have some email address that you set up when you were 13 years old that you're still using to liaise with your clients or to liaise with professionals. And I personally advise people not to include anything more than full name, email address, telephone number, home address if you must, yes, but things like your local government, what else do I tend to see? That local government stands out, state of origin, except for specific jobs where they've asked for it. I don't think it's necessary. And I know that at least in my time, that was some Nigerian law school templates. But those type of things, they might even cause some bias toward you. So I don't think it's necessary to include that. So we can move to the candidate profile. That is, you have your name, all your information, and then some kind of a short bio on the person whose CV we are reading. If you must include it, sorry, please give me a second. My apologies about that. I was talking about the candidate profile. If you must include it, which I actually don't think you have to, let it be short, punchy, to the point. My rule of thumb is that if you're going to do a candidate profile that can apply to most of the lawyers in Nigeria, then maybe we should just go without it. So what this means in most of the cases, avoid adjectives is what I call it, just thrown in there for the sake of being in there. So Yimika is a diligent, hardworking lawyer with attention to detail. She is studious and like anybody can write that. Do you see? My 6-year-old niece can say that she's studious and she's hard. Anybody can say anything. Doing a CV is about having receipts. It's about proving. It's about showing us what you have actually done. And you can leave it to the recruiter. You can leave it to the hiring manager to deduce from what you have told us that you have done the kind of person that you are. So you won't tell me, for instance, that maybe you had a first class in university, first class in Nigerian law school. I really need to tell me that you're hardworking or you're studious. I can make that deduction. So focus on telling us what you have actually done, what you are looking for, as opposed to just throwing in adjectives that you think sound very colorful. So if I were to give a format, I would say who you are, what you've done, and where you're headed. So my name is Yimika Adeshola. I'm a lawyer with XYZ experience in blah, 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 blah. I have worked with organizations such as to whatever I have done. I am looking to add value to a fast rising startup in the tech space as a compliance officer. Just something very short, who you are, what you've done, and where you're headed. Write in third person. So she is actually, so when I was speaking now, I was saying I have, sorry. So she is, she has, she was, he was. You're writing in third person. So I think that is all for the candidate profile. It shouldn't be more than about 5 sentences, because remember that in some cases, not all, in some cases, you also have a sorry, I think I was muted. You also have a cover letter where you might find yourself repeating the same things that you already put in your profile. So very short, very sweet. The education section is straightforward, really, but a few points. Reverse chronological order, so your most recent place of education before any that came before that. After a few years at the bar, I would even say from the beginning of your legal career, your secondary school education is not necessary. For somebody who has many years of experience, your secondary school education is not necessary. I think the things that you've gone on to do speak far louder than secondary school. In no situation is your primary school experience necessary, or your primary school education. I've seen that quite a few times on CVs. You can take that out. It doesn't, I don't think there's much that it changes. So education, like I said, include all the degrees and educational qualifications that you have obtained. Things like certifications and all of that, I would put in a separate section. So like here, I've had others. So you're putting just your LLB, your BL, your masters, those types of degrees. Those are the things that you're putting under education. Then we have your work experience, which is actually the meat of the CV in many cases, especially once you start to gain experience if you're no longer a new wig. But even for new wigs, this can include paid roles, unpaid roles, court attachments, chamber attachment. It's the meat of the matter, really. It's where a recruiter will spend most time when they're looking at your CV. And so it needs to speak to them. I would give that same rule of thumb that if I'm going to read your CV and I'm looking at the work experience section and it applies to many other lawyers, then why do I have to hire you? I think that's actually a question that we should sit down with. You can put yourself in the position of the recruiter when you do that kind of thing. So you've sent me work experience and you're saying, I went to courts, I took dates, drafted motion, drafted all forms of agreement. I did this. That's what the next person's CV says, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And I can show you on demand like 500 or 600 from Legally Engage's database that look like that. There's nothing that's making your CV stand out. So the way that I say this is that the work experience portion of your CV is not a JD section. And that is a mistake that a lot of great candidates make. It's not a place, as a recruiter or as a lawyer, I know what an associate is supposed to do. I know what an intern is supposed to do. So as an intern, I don't need you to come and tell me that you took notes or you followed senior lawyers to court or I don't need you to tell me what was in your job description. I want to know the value that you actually added. So rather than tell me that you drafted and list 10 contracts, why don't you say that you acted for this kind of organization in this sector? You don't need to name names because of confidentiality. You acted for a tech startup and you completed all their incorporation and post-corporation matters. You acted for this kind of organization, and this is what I want to know is specific to you. So if I have a CV and this person says, I acted for First Bank garnishee proceedings, I acted for this person, it's then becomes specific. It's very unlikely that I can pick up another CV and that same person is also saying garnishee proceedings for First Bank, I work for a tech startup. But if all you're giving me is a job description, many other lawyers are going to have the same thing. So I think that is, if I can leave you with anything today as far as the CV goes, is to go back to your CV and actually say what you did. If it's possible to give results, I know that it might be harder with litigation, which is why I ran away, to have all your receipts very quickly. But if it's corporate, for instance, the company is now up and running and they recently won this award. It's not going to be that lengthy. So it'd be something like, I worked for an organization recently voted as one of the top SMEs in Nigeria by Business Day. I helped them to do their this, and this, and that. I worked with a woman in a domestic violence matter. I did this and this and this and that. There was amicable separation of her from blah, blah, blah. I did this. This is what happened. We want receipts. We want to know that what you've done, because I imagine that if you worked as an associate for Dollar Ahmed and Co. from 2015 to 2017, you drafted a contract. I know. You don't need to tell me. You went to court. I know. You don't need to tell me, but give me more. Tell me more. When you went to court, what happened? When you drafted the contract, what did it now lead to? Did it lead to promotion internally? Did it lead to something for your clients? I need specifics. I'm sorry if I'm overstating this point, but it's one that I have seen many times has made a lot of candidates to lose out on good jobs, and it has made the difference between a good candidate and an okay candidate that you might hire if competition is not very fierce. So that is work experience, work history, whatever you might want to call it on your CV. Then I have others here: skills, certifications, awards, publications. Just a quick one. I think the others are straightforward. The certifications you have are what you have, you write them. The awards you've gotten are what you've gotten. Publications you've written are what you've written. Those are fairly straightforward. Skills and interest, I would say that they should be tailored to the job at hand. And again, this is not the place for adjectives. So hardworking is not a skill. What else have I seen? Diligence is not a skill. You know, again, all those kind of things that are just words, haven't been proven. They're not the kind of things that we're looking for under skills. Skills would even usually apply to people who are required to have more technical ability. So can you code, for instance? What are the things that you can, technical, tangible skills that you have? Even as a lawyer, I don't really see the point of saying drafting or advocacy on your CV. If you've told me that you went to court on a first bank garnishing matter and you got XYZ results, you have advocacy skills. You don't need to now use that space to tell me again that you have advocacy skills. You understand? Same thing with interests. I personally would not include interests on my CV, but people are different, organizations are different. Some employers have said that they want to see the kind of person that you are, that you have some interests and activities outside of the law. So include professional sounding ones. They don't have to be professionals. You can even be singing. But there's some certain ones that you just ask yourself, does my employer need to know this? Does my employer need to know that I have this interest? I have seen some very interesting things over the years. So just stop to ask yourself if this is something that you think can add value. Again, at every point in the CV, we need to remind ourselves of the point of a CV. It is to demonstrate your suitability for a job. So when you say drafted contract, does that demonstrate your suitability for a job? When you say my interest is singing, does that demonstrate your suitability for the job? Just whatever, if you feel it does, fantastic, please go ahead and include it. But I just want to make sure that you have at the back of your mind that this is why you've put together a CV. References, I would just say up front that there's no need to include them. When the point comes that references are required, if they are required, the company, the law firm, they'll reach out to you and ask you to provide references. I don't think that you need to have this already stated on your CV. I think I personally like to prepare a CV that doesn't reveal too much personal information about me, which is why personally you would not see my home address on my CV. I don't know where my CV is going to go. And I hope that it goes far. I hope that it goes to places, but do I want them to know my home address in those places that the CV is going to? Personal preference. Do I trust how people are going to treat my CV, how they're going to store it, how they're going to share it? Maybe I don't. So even with things like references, just personal information about you, I would keep to the point that I know that I'm okay if this is shared. In fact, if somebody goes on LinkedIn and says, look at the CV of this candidate too, if you want to hire them, please hire them. I'm fine. I'm not worried, my home address is there, what's going to happen? Just bear these kind of things in mind also as you prepare your CV. So that is all for CV. I think the rest of it I can just kind of run through. I have here some general points that you might want to note. Make it readable, so don't smush all of your text together, spread it out, double line spacing if possible, 1.5. Check your formatting. Don't use Arial at the top, Georgia at the bottom, Calibri in the middle. Everything is seamless, flows together. Sorry, this is not complete. It should say remove distracting designs. I think it's okay to be expressive on your CV. You can put your picture if you want. You can put some borders, but within reason. Again, also because law is even a very conservative profession. So remove anything that is too distracting. Also bearing in mind that how it appears on your computer with all of those beautiful artwork that you've done is not how it might appear on the person's computer, and it might just be upside down when they're looking at it. Condense each section. You don't need to have things too lengthy. I would even say that for a new wig, I don't think there's any reason for your CV to be longer than 2 pages. Even for a more experienced lawyer, I tend to say 2 pages, but you can have kind of like a deal sheet, a transaction sheet, kind of like an appendix where you then go into a bit more detail about what you've done. But as much as possible, keep it short. Run a spell check, run a grammar check, use an appropriate file name. That's one that I see often as well. So if I'm sending my CV anywhere, the name should be something like Yimika Adeshola CV, maybe 2023 if you want, Ahmed Bello CV of Chiamaka Ugumbe, not CV new, not CV for legally engaged, not CV for Odunjiri and Adefulu. Your name and it's your CV, curriculum vitae, whichever one you want to call it, but something appropriate. Again, this thing like your email address is just showing some level of exposure, some level of professionalism. Confirm your personal information, like I already said, in personal details section, make sure everything is correct. Ask somebody to look at it for you. Get professional assistance. I should actually take that out because we don't offer that service anymore. So, but if you know of anybody who would take a look at your CV for you professionally, you can ask them to do that. So that is all for the CV section. I'll quickly run through cover letter. We already said that cover letter is where you introduce yourself to the hiring manager, tell them what you've done, same kind of thing as the profile, but with some added stuff, who you are, what you've done, and where you're headed. So you introduce yourself, your name, your background. My name is Yimika Adeshola. I'm a graduate of the University of Lagos. I'm writing to apply for the job, for the role of associate at the law firm of Benga & Co. Very short, very sweet. That one, there's no long thing there. Why that organization? I think if you're going to do a cover letter at all, this is really where the cocoa is, if you allow me to speak colloquially. This is really where the meat of it is. So is there any particular reason that you've applied to that organization? I don't really see the point in writing a cover letter just to ramble to me about the things that I can already see on your CV. If you're doing a letter, it's because we're taking a different approach. We're making things a bit more specific, a bit more tailored. So how do you think that these people are different from their competitors? What is it that you feel that they can offer you? This cover letter is the place to talk about those things and to sell those things. And also it's the place to sell yourself. So you introduce yourself, why the organization, why you, why do you feel that you are different from your competitors? Who are the other applicants whose CVs they're going to review, whose cover letters they're going to review? Why do you think that you stand out? What is it that you think you specifically and add to that organization? So you're seeing even from now why that self-assessment we did at the beginning is very important. Again, like I said, it's for the people that are going to get a good job, who are going to be able to go above and beyond to state what it is that they can offer. It's that self-assessment place and the research on the organization that you'll be able to identify the things that you're going to want to write here. So this is your cover letter at a glance. Once again, you introduce yourself, you tell them why you'd like to work with them and why they should hire you, and you just wrap up as usual. You can say, I anticipate a favorable response, I wait to hear back from you, whatever it is, and you just close out as you would any letter. I have the same kind of points as well to note when drafting a cover letter. So if you're going to send out a generic cover letter, I would say don't send it. If you have a cover letter that you can send to 3 law firms, I can send to 3 companies, I think just bin it. Because honestly, I don't see the point of having a cover letter if it's not going to be tailored, if it's not going to be specific. I would even go as far as to say your CV itself should be tailored. It's good to have a broader generic CV, but there might be some vacancies that you come across and you realize that you want to focus on certain kind of experience that you have because it's close to what they're looking for. Every application that you do, you should be sitting down with the JD if you have the JD. If you don't have the JD, you can ask yourself, okay, I'm applying to be an associate in this law firm. What does an associate do? And what you want to do is after you have that JD or you've written that JD, you're checking that everything on the JD, you have reflected that you have that capacity, you have that you can provide what they're looking for. You have reflected it either in your CV or in your cover letter. So you check your formatting, same thing from the CV section, the font, the spacing, the bullets, the numbering, etc. You can put this in the body of an email. I keep saying that it's redundant, but if maybe somebody on the panel can give me something different in their own experience. But I think that if you're even going to write a cover letter, it can just be the body of the email and you attach your CV. Run a spell check and grammar check. Yes, this one has only ask a friend or a senior colleague to check it out. Just fresh eyes on a document. Never a bad idea. Okay, so here I was going to take some questions, but if you would like me to continue, I can touch very briefly. I already said that I was going to be very brief with interviewing. I'm sorry if I'm taking longer than anticipated. You know that I did mention that when we do this, it takes about 2 days because we bring out the CV, we go into each thing subject by subject. We show you how to actually draft questions to answer, all that kind of stuff. But interviewing. So like we've done with the CV, you need to know the purpose of a thing. Again, is an interview something that they just do because that's the way it is, Sha. You send your CV in and then they'll call you and they'll talk to you. Why do you think that organization wants to speak to you? So I put here that the purpose of the interview is to assess your suitability for the role. So you have shown something on your CV, you've said you can do this, you can do that. That's really then the place that they test it, that they can probe further, they can ask you questions, get to know you a bit better, and you can also get to know them better because ideally it should go both ways. Interviews, I'm sure we already know, can take different formats, can be on the phone, can be Zoom, can be one-on-one, can be one candidate to a panel. I've even seen a panel to quite a few candidates as an interview. It can be behavioral, it can be just asking about your competency, your ability to do the job. Most likely, it's a hybrid. So I would remind you of your basic interview etiquette. I put the ones that I find to be most important here. Punctuality, especially if you have a virtual interview. I think that there are very, very few acceptable reasons for being late to a virtual interview. Test out your connection beforehand. Make sure that everything is working fine. You can join on time. Even for physical interviews, make sure that you're familiar with the location. If you're not, you might want to go and check it out beforehand. Get a rough idea of how long it will take you to get there. A good rule of thumb is get there 15 to 20 minutes before, not too early and definitely not late. Dressing nowadays, I think, is dressed as is required, which is where your research might come in a bit. But if you're not sure, you never go wrong with just wearing your suit. You never go wrong with just wearing your dress. It's one of the cases where it might be better to wear your suit and turn up and see everybody is in their bar or in their up and down than it is for it to be vice versa. And then politeness, I think that goes without saying. I actually like it when I'm speaking to a candidate, I'm interviewing a candidate, and I can see that they can hold their own, they can stand their ground, they can defend their position, they can defend their answers, but also bear in mind politeness. There's no need to be rude, there's no need to be arrogant. No one is doing anyone any favors. I always say, as far as interviews and just job search is going, the company is not doing you any favors, even though a lot of the time it will seem like that, but you also are not doing them any favors. Ideally, it's a mutually beneficial relationship between two parties, and we just want to accord ourselves that respect. So interviewing, what are the other things that I need to bear in mind to actually prepare for the interview? Something that I've heard called the 3 R's of interviewing. So you carry out your research, which you should have done ideally before you even sent in your CV, but there might be tailored things that you now want to do that you've been invited to the interview. You carry out your research. I would advise people who don't have a lot of interviewing experience to have some kind of rehearsal, even if it's with just yourself and a friend, or even just yourself and a mirror. Your composure, your answering of questions. Are you talking too fast? Are you talking too slowly? Are you audible enough? It's good to do. I always say mock interviews are never a bad idea. We become more confident when we've done something a few times. So if you can do that, that's fantastic. And then relax. Something I always say is that if you've been invited to an interview, I don't even think that's the place to start getting nervous or worry at all if you didn't worry when you sent in your CV, because it means that they looked at your CV and they were interested. They're like, oh, this person seems like a very good candidate. I would like to meet them. So they're already skewed in your favor a little bit. They already think this is a good candidate. I want to work with this candidate. So go in that confidence, knowing that They want to see me because there's something about me that attracts them. There's something about me that interests them. And hopefully that can help you feel a little calmer. Popular interview talking points. I don't have time, so I'm not going to go into this, but I've kind of put into different categories the kinds of things you'll be asked in interviews. Questions about you, your career history, your career goals, your interests, questions about your ability to do the job. So a lot of this might be your previous experience, what you're currently doing, how have you done it, how have you tackled problems in the past. Then your personality and how you fit in the organization, questions about the company, maybe sometimes to show that you've actually carried out research or you know what you're going to be doing on the job, and then salary negotiations, which might be in the first interview or a subsequent interview. So that is all from me. I hope that in this time I've been able to give you some kind of overview of what to expect in the job market and how to prepare yourself for the job market.
Yimika, thanks a lot for this. I think that was a brilliant walkthrough. Application letters, CVs, personal statements, and then preparing for interviews. Very brilliant. I mean, a big takeaway for me, something about you that interests them for them to invite you for an interview. And I think that if people follow all the steps that you've narrated prior to getting to an interview, they'll surely get an interviewing opportunity and go in there with that confidence. Thank you so very much. I'm happy to say or to note that we have quite a number of people here from different branches in the country, as far long as Yola and Abuja and the rest of them. So thank you for joining all of you. Yimika, we'll go to question time in a minute, but I just want to acknowledge the fact that we have the president of the MBA here. He's been part of the session throughout. We also have Dr. Dioya Defulu, who is the chairman of the SBL. He joined in much earlier. I'm not sure he's still here now. Mr. President, if you're here, do you want to make a few comments before we go to question time? Okay, we could take the questions while the president comes on. Can you see the questions, Yimika? Do you want me to go at them?
Yes, I can. I just need
to
find how to expand them. Aha, found it. Okay.
So the first person says, I'm a fairly new wig.
Okay.
Who is current? Can you see? Or do you want me to read?
Yes, I can. I'm trying to go to the top so I can find the first one. But if you help me, I won't mind.
All right. I'm a fairly new wig who is currently working in the international development sector. However, I wish to transition fully into law practice. Can you advise on how feasible this is, considering the fact that there is a knowledge gap?
I'm glad that she added knowledge gap, because I was going to ask what she's doing currently and if there's any overlap at all. But what I tend to advise people in those situations is try to find what you can do by yourself. So you're a lawyer, and you're a lawyer whether you work with a law firm or you don't work with a law firm. So is there opportunity for you to start to take little things, tenancy matters from family, friends, going to the police station to represent somebody on your own, drafting a contract here and there? Is there any opportunity for you to do that? If there is, I would advise that you start to do that as quickly as possible. But even in the meantime, I imagine that there might be some transferable skills that you have that you can sit and look at and sell to an organization, maybe an organization that would be the client of the place that you are currently. So they're already doing work in that kind of space, and that can be some kind of stepping stone or in-betweener from where you are and where you'd like to go. So the two things would be to look at your transferable skills and to also consider doing some jobs, doing some kind of legal work, so that when you write your CV, there's actually some legal things that legal experience that you can put on there.
Okay, so the next one is, thank you so much for this refined lecture. My name is Christian Icle. My question is, as a young lawyer of 2 years in the bar, how do I get into the big companies, law firms, as most of them require 5, 7, 10 years experience?
I mean, first of all, I don't even know if that's the case, that just because a law firm is a big law firm, they require 5, 10 years. I think that's role by role. So what role is it that you're looking for? Because I know law firms to hire across all cadres, across all levels. But you're right in that the law firms might be saturated for somebody who's 2 years post-call. What I would advise, I don't know if she mentioned where she currently works. If you work in a law firm, I would advise that you can continue to toe that line. Why do you want to work in a big organization? This is a question that I get many times. Oh, I want to work in a big law firm, but this, I want to work in a big law firm, but that. What are the reasons? So I want to believe that you've done your self-assessment and you've actually seen that at the end of the day, I have cogent reasons, knowing myself, knowing what I want for my career, why I want to work with these organizations. But my main answer would be that I don't know that to even be the case. I know law firms to be looking for lawyers with all levels of experience, and you just get placed at the level that matches your year of call.
Okay, thank you. And this one is, but new wigs probably don't have these achievements that can be used to buff up the experience section of their CVs.
Yes. So when I was speaking about the experience section, this is actually one of the main reasons I asked at the very beginning of the call, if we had only new wigs or if we had a mix, and I understand that we have a mix. So yes, for the experience section of your CV, you might not have as much experience to put down as a more qualified person, but I believe that at the very least, you did your court attachments and your chamber attachments. So what were you doing in that time? It would then be a different case if we haven't really maximized those opportunities and we don't have things to put. But I know that for every graduate, you have that at the very least. If you've done internships, you put your internships. I don't think any recruiter is expecting to see a fresh graduate CV with all sorts of experience listed. You work with what you have. If it's organizations that you've worked with at school, you put the organizations there, you put what you did, the results, how many programs you held, how many people attended the programs. Again, remember that you're not just writing a JD, you're giving us receipts of what you've actually done. So it doesn't have to be work experience. And I think that was on the presentation that I shared. It could be things you've done at school, it could be on paid roles, internships, whatever you've done, your experience is your experience, really.
So just, I think a few other questions that we have are the ones we can take. Some people want to know whether they're going to get the slides from the session, and the answer from our end is yes. They want to know whether they can get a recording of a session, and I'll say that all the trainings provided by the Institute of Continuing Legal Education are uploaded on the MBA HQ YouTube channel. So anybody that logs on can view all of this. Yimika, what an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Very practical, very direct. I enjoyed it myself. And I'm sure if you look at the chat box, you see that people were quite enthused by what they had to learn from today. It's exactly what we want to achieve. Very practical, very direct, and very well delivered. Thank you very much. And you know, because you're dealing with these Gen Z people, interspersing it with some of those what did you call them again? Made a lot of sense. So thank you.
No problem, sir. Thank you very much for having me once again.
Thank you for your kindness. We'll now go to Kelechi Ibe. Kelechi, I'm sure you're here now. Kelechi is the next speaker, and he'll be dealing with the other aspects of getting started. Kelechi Ibe is a senior associate at Udo Doma and Bello Osage, one of Nigeria's highly regarded law firms. He advises on tax, mergers and acquisitions, private equity, and general corporate issues. He qualified to practice law in Nigeria in 2016. He previously worked with the Deal Advisory Mergers and Acquisition Tax Unit of KPMG in Nigeria, where he provided a range of corporate advisory services bordering on tax and regulatory issues to top-level and multinational entities. He is the Assistant Secretary of the Taxation Committee of the Nigerian Bar Association Section on Business Law, a student member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, ACCA, and a graduate member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN. Kelechi recently won the Lawyer of the Year award at the Under 30 CEOs Award by CEOs Network Africa. He was a nominee for the Future Awards Africa Prize for Lawyers and a 30 Under 30 awardee by Handholding magazine. He is the founder of Greenridge Foundation, a technology-driven nonprofit that leverages technology to connect small business owners and startups with corporate law firms that provide free legal support to these startups as part of their corporate social responsibility. He has deep interest in human capacity development, purpose-centered living, and Africa economic transformation. It is my pleasure, distinguished delegates, to introduce and to yield the floor to Kelechi Ibe. Kelechi, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tobena. Hello, everyone. Please, can you hear me clearly? Just to be sure that
I can hear you very clearly.
Okay, thank you very much.
I can see you too.
Thank you. Just to say thank you to the president of the NBA, Mr. Yakubu Icle, SAN, and to you, Mr. Tobena Rojikwe, for the opportunity to present to my colleagues. I mean, I always take these opportunities very seriously. Just to say that I'm glad to be here. And thank you so much, Emeka. I learned so much from your session. I know you had a lot more to say, save for the time that the brevity of time. So, but I learned so much, and I know that those who have attended have learned so much as well. I have a few slides to share, although I have to admit that my slides are not as pretty as Yumika's. So please pardon me, but I just thought it would help to share something just to guide our conversation. Okay, I think the slide should be up now. Okay, so I've been asked to speak about a couple of things, mostly related to how new Wigs can navigate the legal profession, how they could do the work better, how to develop in their careers. And it's very, I mean, the conversation could go either way. It could be very broad, but I've tried to narrow it down to sharing tips for excellence, how young lawyers, how the new Wigs could actually excel in the legal profession. And I typically like to share my story. I mean, Mr. Tobena has read my profile, and for some people it might seem glamorous, but I didn't start out my career having it very easy either. So I like to share my story because I know that on this call we have some persons who are practicing law in maybe Kebbi, for instance, or in Jigawa, or in Umuahia, somewhere that's not Lagos or the big cities like Port Harcourt or Abuja. And they might be wondering, so these conversations might not really impact them or affect them, so I'm trying to make this conversation also include those category of persons. When I graduated from the Nigerian law school, which is, I'll just say typical, the career journey of a typical young lawyer, young Wig. I was posted to Anambra State for my NYSC, the 1-year compulsory national service. I wanted to serve in Lagos because, just like Yimika said, when we were in school, most of us assumed that the legal profession was mostly about going to court, and being a lawyer was about wearing the wig and the gown and going to court. So my mindset changed when I attended the law school in Lagos, and I got to realize that there was more to the legal profession, than going to court. And so I developed interest in corporate law, corporate commercial law. But then most of us would agree that to practice corporate commercial law, you most likely have to be in Lagos. I mean, it's advisable to be in Lagos, maybe Abuja, maybe Port Harcourt. But then I was sent to Anambra State to practice for my NYC, and I didn't want to redeploy, and so I decided to do the 1-year service in Anambra State. So I served in Oka, the cities, the state capital. And for those of us who know how the cities are, most of the practice that's done there is either litigation, real estate, mostly litigation and real estate. So I spent 1 year doing litigation, core litigation, NIC, Federal High Court, Court of Appeal. And it was a very wonderful experience. I still cherish the knowledge that I garnered during my 1 year doing litigation. But you see, the challenge then happened, the challenge I didn't experience was that when I was done with my NYSC, I wanted to work with a commercial law firm, a corporate law firm. And there was this mismatch in skills. Just someone had asked a question earlier. You want to work in a commercial big law firm, but you don't have the skills to work there. I only had litigation skills for litigation. I had only just done it for 1 year, but then I wanted to work as a corporate commercial lawyer. So I was sending CVs to all the law firms, the top law firm that I knew. I wasn't getting any responses. And it was almost frustrating, but I'll just summarize by saying I came down to Lagos regardless, started out working at a smaller law firm where I got to do a bit of everything, litigation, corporate commercial, different things, but an opportunity then came for me to join KPMG. I got to learn about the graduate trainee program for KPMG, and all that was required to join that program was actually to have a 2-1 at the law school and 2-1 at the undergraduate level. So, and I had those qualifications. So that takes me to the next point on my slide, the myth, which is that you have to work in a top law firm. It's not necessarily true. You don't always, not every lawyer would work in a law firm. There are other places you could work. And I don't think we should limit our options, because I find that a lot of people are not living their dreams, or are not fulfilling their career goals simply because they want to work in a certain category or a certain class of law firms that are not opening up their arms to them, and then they feel frustrated. So I worked in a smaller law firm for 5 months while going through the KPMG recruitment process, which was very rigorous, by the way. The GMATs and series of interviews, and by God's grace, I got in. And I started doing tax. So that was actually how I ventured into doing tax. I didn't do tax because I had interest in tax from school. No, it was because that was the opportunity that presented itself and I took it. But then working at a multinational like KPMG exposed me to a lot of things, and I got to learn tax, and I found it very interesting. Today, I work at Bello Sage as a senior associate in the tax practice group. And then I do other things. But what gave me the opportunity to join UUBO was because I had learned a lot of tax. I had a lot of tax experience working with KPMG. So while I couldn't join UUBO or any of the top law firms immediately after my NYSC, I took a different route, almost like a detour, then came back right into the law firms. And again, when I came in as a lateral hire. I had more leverage, I had more experience. So my career growth has actually been exponential, simply because I had actually made that detour. Maybe I wouldn't have grown as quickly as I have had gone through the regular route in a law firm. So I like to share my story because I know that most people are in the same situation where they are not able to work in a top law firm, and and they feel like they can't achieve their dreams of being a great lawyer or working in a top organization. So I think my story could give you some, pointers as to what you can do. But then the next conversation to have is, could your grades, your experience, and your location actually impact your choices and your options? And from my story, you could tell that yes, they do. Some of us want to work in top law firms, but we don't have the grades to work in those law firms because of how saturated the legal market is. Lawyers are churned out like every year in their numbers, and we have just very few law firms that can actually afford to absorb those lawyers and pay them their worth. You see, so that means that these law firms have to be very selective, and they would then have to use certain parameters to judge. And one of those parameters would be your grades and also your experience. When I say experience, not necessarily experience working as a lawyer, but maybe internship experience. I found out when I got to the law school that my peers are doing internship. Throughout my 5 years in school at the university, I never interned anywhere. But then when I got to find out that my mates had people who graduated, who were in the law school with me at the same time, had interned in virtually all the top law firms and even gone beyond law firms to even accounting firms, PwC, KPMG, Owando and all. So you really wonder how you're able to compete with these kind of people, and they also have good grades. You see, so these things could actually be obstacles, and I'm just being realistic because I'm trying to be very practical in sharing some of the tips I'll share with you today. Also, your location. You have interest in tax, you have interest in mergers and acquisition, in private equity, but you're living in maybe Adamawa State, for instance, or maybe, I don't know, any other states, maybe in the far north or in the southwest, maybe Badon or somewhere, you really can't, you won't be able to practice the things you have interest in because of the location. So your grades, your experience, your location could actually impact your choices and your options. So what then happens? What's the solution? You leverage your strengths. Some of us are not very lucky to have a place to stay in Lagos. Some of us are not very lucky to have very wonderful grades, maybe double first class. These days, people make double first class, some even come in with their masters, so it's very competitive and not everyone is in that position. So what do you then do? The good thing about it is life always gives you something you could work with. I don't think there's anyone who is completely helpless in life. You will always have something to work with. So you just need to leverage your strengths and do not amplify your weaknesses. Let people rather see your strengths. So some of us are very good rhetorically. Some of us are very good in terms of writing. You could write very well, but you may not have made the best of grades, but you could write very well. Some of us have interest in litigation. We don't really necessarily want to be a corporate lawyer, but then you still want to work in a big law firm where you could do big ticket litigation, white collar crimes and the likes. So what do? You amplify your strengths and let people know you for what you know how to do best. For instance, I think it's foolhardy to do litigation for 1 year, 2 years, and want to switch to doing M&A, private equity in a corporate law firm. No one would hire you because you don't have the experience. You don't seem to have any value to add. So what I usually advise people is, in leveraging your strengths, you could actually apply to those law firms with your litigation experience, because some of these law firms are full service law firms, like Mr. Tubena's law firm. I know it's a full service law firm, and they have a litigation arm, they have corporate commercial, they have different arms really. So why would you be applying for a corporate commercial role when your experience is in litigation? So you amplify your strengths. You apply for the litigation for role in disputes. Just get your foot into the door first of all, and then if you have interest in corporate commercial, you can then begin to work your way to switch to becoming a corporate lawyer. Because I know people who started out as litigation experts in my firm, and today oil and gas, they do oil and gas and power, but they started out as litigation lawyer, as dispute lawyers. So in leveraging your strengths, whenever you're sending applications, let the recruiter see the strengths that you're putting forward and apply for roles that you're most suitable for. Get invited for an interview, excel at the interview, get offered the job, and then when you're in the law firm already, you can then start talking to the partners or supervisors about having interest in other areas, and then it's just going to be a matter of time. They'll start bringing you in, and before you know it, you've transitioned into being a corporate commercial lawyer. But you might even find out that you don't even like this corporate commercial thing, by the way. So I'm mindful that we don't have a lot of time, so I'll just move right quickly. Now, one of the things I was asked to discuss in today's session is having the right mindset towards work. Because as a young lawyer joining an organization, there are a lot of challenges you would experience. Most times, depending on the work environment, you might not get all the support you need to grow, but you need to have a mindset for success. Mindset that understands that you're responsible for your growth, for your success in life. And it's not necessarily about where you work, it's about your person. And so I typically advise young lawyers. I'm also a young lawyer, so let me not speak like I'm speaking to a different category of. So I always advise my peers and some other younger lawyers to be willing to put in the work, be willing to work and put in the hours rather. You find that these days, and to be clear, the practice of law is stressful wherever you're doing it, whether you're in Lagos or you're in Anambra or wherever you are. As long as you have to prepare processes, you have to prepare agreements, prepare legal opinions, represent clients in court, it is stressful. Sometimes you have to work weekends, sometimes you have to work late into the night. For some people, it's worse, but generally, it's not an easy profession. So, but to succeed in it, you need to be willing to work and put in the hours. And that's the mindset that guarantees success. When you know that you need to do more, to learn more, and the more knowledge you have, the more excellent you become and more outstanding you would be, then you would understand why it's important to to be willing to work and put in the hours. I say this because we find that in the workplace these days, a lot of people, particularly people of the relatively younger generation that you would call Gen Z, tend to want too much of balance as against, doing the work. It's not bad to have work-life balance. I mean, it's the ideal thing, but sometimes people tilt more towards the balance than the work, and you really can't achieve success with that kind of mindset. So, and you also need to realize that in the early years, it gets easier as you grow, but because you have to do the groundwork when you're just starting off, you really need to roll up your sleeves and do the dirty work. And this also means that you need to go out of your way to ask for work sometimes. You could be in an organization where work is given to certain kinds of people, maybe people that have shown competence in a certain area, and the supervisors know that if you give this guy this work, you get it done. So most times, they naturally tend to flow work to those categories of persons. And so if you're in such an organization, you don't fold your arms and wait for work to come to you. You go after the supervisors, ask for work, be willing to work. And once they've tested you over time, they'll be more comfortable to give you work to do. See, so that's usually my advice to young people that I speak to. That's the only way you can guarantee success. Have the mindset that you're not being used, because some people feel like the workplace is using me. I have to do all this work, and how much are they paying me? They're paying me peanuts. But if you have that mindset, you won't be driven to put in the hours to do the work. No, you would always feel like you're being used. But if you know you're doing it for yourself, you're improving yourself, you're building your knowledge, your reservoir, your value. Because in the business of law, what you really sell is knowledge. So the more knowledge you accumulate, the more experience you accumulate, the more valuable you are. So if you think about it that way, you'll be happy to do more work, to take on more engagement, more assignments. And then you need to be disciplined. Nobody likes to do work with an indisciplined person. You're given tasks to do, and you miss the deadline, you do not communicate challenges that you have, and then you send in poor work. Nobody will want to work with you. And that simply means, and if people do not work with you, it means you won't have the opportunity to grow or to build experience. And again, that means you won't be as valuable, because like I said, in our profession, what we sell is knowledge. So be disciplined whenever you're given tasks to do, communicate if you have issues, but I'll get to the issue of communication. You also need to invest in knowledge. We live in a very dynamic world, in a dynamic age where things are changing daily. Court decisions, for instance, have changed age-long legal positions that we used to know. So the legal maxims we used to cite when we were in school, no longer apply today. So the things you learned in law school have become redundant. So you cannot be relying on knowledge from law school when you're doing work. So it means that you need to be interested in building updated knowledge. You need to seek knowledge. You need to read books. You need to attend events. You need to do proper research when you're given work to do. And that's one way that you'd be able to stand out. You really cannot be excellent or outstanding if you do not love knowledge and also invest in knowledge. And when I say invest in knowledge, the key thing you're investing is your time, because the knowledge is actually very democratized now. You can find knowledge almost anywhere on the internet, but it's just the time to invest in it, to look up resources and spend time reading them, interrogating them. Those are the kind of things that we don't really find again these days, because people are very busy with different things and do not have time to build knowledge. But those who are able to do that, you'd always see the difference. It will be very clear in how they progress in their career and, of course, in their lives. Another thing, as a young lawyer working in a law firm or working anywhere, and maybe to take you back a little bit, so the tips I'm sharing are very generic, may not really apply to those working in law firms, but just to say that, and I think I should have made this point a little earlier, when you're starting out your career, you do not have to limit your options to just law firms. I would prefer, and let me be very clear, that you start your career in a law firm as a lawyer, but because not everyone has the opportunity to do so, it's okay to seek out other options. Like I gave the example of how I started out at KPMG, and I am here today. There are a lot of other organizations you could start with where you get to do actual work. I won't advise you to go in-house as a young lawyer, go become a legal officer in a company. I won't advise you to do that. I would rather you work in a professional services firm, could be a law firm, could be a consulting firm like I've mentioned, KPMG, could be maybe a company secretarial firm where you get to work with clients and where you're in an advisory position or in a position where you have to work for other people or external parties, not for the organization. Because what then happens is you'll be exposed to a lot of various amounts of instructions and complexities in terms of the request that your client will come with, and you would build knowledge quicker. Maybe after you've done that for 2 years, 3 years, you can then decide what you want to do, whether you want to go in-house or remain there or move to a law firm, So the tips I'm sharing are just for general, wherever you're working, wherever you find yourself, always ask questions and communicate. I find that some people would rather spend hours trying to figure out something than ask questions and get it done quicker. And so you find that some young people spend so much time working on a task simply because they're trying to figure it out themselves. But they could simply have asked a senior person for guidance or their colleagues that they perceive has done this similar thing and would save them time. And again, everybody recognizes that young lawyers are trying to learn the ropes in the profession when they just start out. We all recognize that. And people try to give allowance for that. But there's only so much allowance you can give. If you have deadlines to meet, you don't want an associate spending 4 days on a draft that would have taken ordinarily maybe a day or thereabouts, So as much as you'd want to be patient, you'd like to understand, there's a limit to what you can do. So as a young lawyer, as a new wig working wherever you are, whenever you have an instruction, always think about the fastest way to get it done. And one of the fastest ways is actually to ask someone who has done it before. Oh, do you have a template? Have you done this before? Or could you have this instruction and I want to do this? Could you please give me guidance? That way, you get the work done very quickly. And sometimes even the quality will be better because you have proper guidance. You're not going all over the place finding what to do or looking for resources that may not even be relevant to what you've been asked to do. So asking questions and communicating any challenges, and then communication is more in terms of letting the person who's giving you the task know that you're experiencing certain challenges, and the person could maybe explain again what they wanted you to do or give you proper perspective. So always have that at the back of your mind, that there's always room for you to ask questions. Do not think that when you ask questions, you'll be taken as being unserious. No, not really. That's not how it works. Again, to the next point on my slide, you need to learn trends and current events. Maybe these might be more relevant for corporate lawyers because some of the work that we do affects businesses, and those things are also connected to events and trends, maybe in the economy, in the political scene. For instance, if you're doing an advisory work for a client today, maybe that has to do with license, someone who wants to get a license from the government, from a regulator, you need to know that, for instance, that this is an election season. Sometimes from precedent, there have been times when maybe assets of governments were sold. Okay, let me use privatization, for instance. You're advising the client in and a privatization deal, the person wants to acquire government assets. You need to be mindful that this is an election year. There might be they will transition from one government to the other. And from precedent, you've seen where a new government came in and, cancelled or reneged on agreements that have been entered into by the previous government. So those kind of risk areas, as a commercial lawyer advising your client, maybe a foreign client, you let them know that these things exist. In an election year, this can happen. Maybe for licenses. Another thing you need to be mindful of, let's say, for instance, FX, foreign exchange. We do not have enough FX in Nigeria. There's FX liquidity. People are looking for foreign currency to pay their foreign counterparties. And you're reviewing an agreement that maybe imposes an obligation on your client to receive money in Naira, but then has to pay a counterpart in dollars. So how does your client access foreign currency to pay a foreign counterpart? So because you're aware of the trends, what's happening in the economy, in the country, you'll be able to give your clients proper guidance. And imagine as a young lawyer, you send your work to a senior or a supervisor, and you've highlighted this point, for instance, the point on FX that I mentioned, or the one on the political uncertainties. The person would be very impressed with your work because it would show that you've put in a lot of industry. You have you understand what's required, and you've decided to go the extra mile to add value, and that's what makes you stand out as a person, as an employee, as an associate, wherever you work. Also, you need to learn the business of law. Why this is important is because a lot of people tend to just be concerned about work, and they do not understand how the law firms they work with make money. And so they're not concerned about contributing to the bottom line. But one of the ways you can grow very quickly in your career is to show commercial awareness. Your supervisors, the partners, whoever you're working with, they realize that you are someone who has an understanding of the business, that's the law firm's business, and you could really add value in that area. They will take you more seriously. They will take your opinions more seriously. They might even expose you more to business development opportunities. And that way you get to become more visible. Then it also means that you will grow quickly if you're more visible to the people who determine where your growth in the organization. So so those are the points I'd like to make in terms of having the right mindset towards work. And I'll move right into networking. This is another very great point that most people do not take seriously. As a young lawyer, one of the greatest tools you can deploy or you should have is the gift of people, or having people in various places that could put in words for you, that could give you guidance that could, advise you on different things, or could act as referees, for you. You need that. But then the only way to meet new people is actually to network. And I find that one of the easiest ways to network is actually to be interested in meeting people. So it's possible to go to an event and, let's say, the MBA conference or the MBA conference. You attend the conference, just focus on what's being taught in the sessions and leave and not make a new friend. You wouldn't have met any new person simply because you're not interested. But another person goes to the conference with the mindset that I need to meet new people. I need to meet someone in this field. I need to meet someone who has an understanding of this thing. I need to meet a partner in this law firm because I have interest in working there. So that interest drives the person to consciously create relationships. So maybe during lunch, the person is on the table with someone else, and then they start a conversation, and they're able to, build a relationship that lasts beyond that space. I like to share how I met one of my mentors, Desmond Ogba, who is a partner at Templars. I met him at an NBASBL conference. I had seen his picture somewhere. So I have a friend who used to work at Templars, he posted Desmond's picture on Facebook. So I saw Desmond's picture, and I mean, I just noted the name, and was a young guy, partner at Templar. So I took note of it. So then I went for MBA's Girl Conference during my NYC year. From Anambra, I got a scholarship under Olumide Akpata's administration to attend the MBA's Girl Conference for free. So at the conference, I walked into the venue and I met Desmond. I mean, mind you, I was meeting him for the very first time. So I walked right straight. I walked to him, introduced myself, told him how I saw his picture, and then we had a quick chat. It was very warm. We exchanged numbers. Subsequently, we met again because it was like a 3-day conference, I think. We kept meeting ourselves during the conference. And that's how we built a relationship that has lasted till this day. He's been very instrumental to my career growth. And, he's someone I respect very much, simply because I walked up to him and introduced myself, and I was interested in, and he wasn't the only one I met. I also met other people at that event. The current AG of Lagos State, I met him also at an NBA's event, simply just going to him, greeting him, So networking is important. You can meet anyone at any time and build valuable relationships simply because you're interested in meeting people. And one of the greatest places to start is LinkedIn. Because what then happens is you send people connection requests on LinkedIn, and you follow their activities, and then you then meet them in person, and you're able to say, oh, we are connected on LinkedIn, great. And then you have, that's like a very good icebreaker. You're able to have conversations from there. Okay, I think I'll share this story later on, but let me just move forward. Another thing is you need to be precise. When you meet people, it's not the time to share irrelevant things. You know what you want. This person is a lawyer. You want to be a great lawyer like him. So let your approach be very precise. You need to let the person know that you're interested in being maybe like him, or you'd like him to influence you. You'd like him to be someone you always talk to about stuff. You need to be precise. You don't just keep relationships very open-ended, and then the person doesn't know what to do with you. When you're calling the person on the phone, he doesn't know what to expect from that conversation. So people need to know that you're talking to them for a certain reason. Maybe you want to build a relationship with them that's maybe career-driven. It could metamorphose into something else, but from the get-go, people should know why you're speaking to them. And I think I found that to be very helpful, because it also helps me make allowance for people. For instance, a lot of people walk up to me, they want to know me, they want to be friends with me. But I have a lot of people who talk to me. So what exactly do you want me to do for you? So we start somewhere, and then maybe we could grow to something, something else. But let's be clear what you want from the get-go. Another way to network very easily is to speak about the things you do. People don't like to be the only ones contributing to conversation. So you attend an event, and you're on a table, and one person is the only one driving the conversation. He's the one making all the efforts, or she's the one making all the efforts, and you're not doing anything. You need to contribute. Let the person know you're interested in building that, interested in that conversation, or building that relationship or that friendship. And one of the easiest way to do that is talk about the things you do. It might not be very interesting or glamorous, or the regular things you would expect, but just share what you've been doing. Maybe you're during your NYC year, you were involved in the legal aid group, and you helped release some prisoners. It could be a great way to start a conversation, or you have an interest in something, and you'd like to share those kind of things. It's a way to keep conversations going. So be interested in talking about the things you do, or the things you have interest in. Find that to be a very effective way of networking. And another thing I would really advise young people not to do is to make requests or demands from people they meet, people they want to mentor them. Because I find that a lot of people reach out to people and say, I want you to be my mentor. But really what they are saying is, I want someone I can always ask for money when I need money. And it's not the best approach. Your mentors are not people you overburden with your needs and your requests. No, you don't do that. If it's a professional relationship, you keep it that way. Like I said, you could go into something else, something better, but you do not start relationships like that with making demands. Oh, I need money to do this, I need money to do that. No, you're going to chase that person away from you. So please try not to make requests, those kind of requests when you're speaking to people. Another way to network with people is actually to share your wins and low moments and to seek advice. It's possible you could meet someone at an event and then the person travels to Abuja, you're in Lagos, you don't get to see often, can't call the person on the phone to discuss anything. But one of the ways you can keep in touch with that could actually be to share some of your wins. Maybe you won a new prize or something. Just send the person a chat. Oh, I just thought I should let you know that, oh, this has happened. I applied for this and I got it. Or just anything that could just keep the conversation going. And not just your wins, your low moments. Maybe you were rejected. You applied for something and you got rejected and you're like, oh, I applied for this. I was rejected. I wonder what happened. But the person could cheer you on, give you some tips on how to do better. So those are ways you keep in touch with people and seek advice as well. People you meet could actually be very instrumental to helping you learn new things or expose you to certain information you may not have known. So if you have met someone somewhere, one of the ways to keep in touch is to ask them for advice every now and then, reach out to them and, let them know that you need their help with something in terms of advice now, not cash request. So I know we don't have time, so I'm moving really quickly. I'll move on to the next point, which is career development. Having said all of these things about your mindset and your networking, we need to I need to speak to your actual development as a lawyer. You need to be ambitious. You need to be ambitious. Like I said, this profession is actually very competitive and there are very limited opportunities. But one thing that can make you stand out is if you're ambitious. One of the ways you can excel is to be ambitious, be driven, not be discouraged by the things that are around you. I mean, I've shared your story with my story with you. But easily have been discouraged when I couldn't get into a top law firm when I started out. But I mean, I was resilient. I took the opportunities that I saw or that were available, and I was able to still navigate the way through to where I wanted to be. So my advice to the world on the call would be ambitious, take those steps, do not be discouraged. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You get rejected, but not the end of the world. So make those bold moves. I mean, I used to tell people, some people that encourage me the most when I meet in law school. From law school, they are applying to international law firms, they haven't even been caught in Nigerian bar. I mean, that's the level of ambition that these guys have. And most of them today are working in top law firms globally. I mean, some of the biggest law firms in the world, if you think about, these guys are working there simply because they were driven and there were no limitations in their mind. Also, try to attend events, NBA events, SBL, sector events. Maybe you're interested in aviation and they have an aviation event, or you're interested in maritime, you're interested in private equity. Try to attend those kind of events. If you are not able to afford them, you can always reach out to someone who can maybe put in some words for you. Oh, I have this mentee who would like to attend this event but cannot pay for it. Can we maybe have a scholarship scheme for him or her? Or the person can even sponsor you, or you can even speak to the NBA. I mean, it's a matter of interest. If you have interest to happen, I told you how I attended the NBA SBL event. I was doing my NYS in Faraway Oka, and the event was in Lagos. And the Olumide Apata administration at the time had a scholarship scheme for us. We applied and I was selected. I think we wrote an essay, I can't remember. And I found myself, there was accommodation paid for. I didn't pay for the conference. All I had to do was transport myself to the what you want to do in your career. Maybe you had always thought you liked um, M&A or finance or capital markets, but then you just realized that I think litigation is what I want to do, and you just focus on that. So another way to develop in your career is actually to build your brand. Again, I know a lot of people who work in top law firms today simply because of how active they were on LinkedIn. People already knew them even before they applied for anything. They already, career-wise, people know that, oh, this guy speaks about this kind of things. This guy does this. And by the time they're appearing in interview rooms, a lot of people on the panel already recognize them, like, oh, I know you from somewhere. It's their brand. They've been able to build the brand that they have. And you easily could do that on social media. There's no monopoly anymore. So you could do what you want to do. You craft a message for yourself and people get to know you for what you want them to know you, for. For instance, I want people to know me as a tax lawyer. So some conversations you find about me when I'm not discussing politics, I'm talking about tax. So that way people know me as a tax lawyer, you see. So you do that and it makes joining some organizations very easy. You can also start with publications in your areas of interest. Maybe you like energy, clean energy, or power. You just start doing research, putting up publications. People read your publications. People do Google search, and your article comes up. Your name resonates. When someone, the person might not even know you, but once you mention your name, someone will be like, "Oh, I think I've seen something you wrote before," or your name just sounds familiar. People should know you, build that brand. And one of the easiest ways is actually to start with publications. I encourage that a great deal. It's not easy to do. I know it's difficult, but it's certainly something you can attempt. And I know it's very effective. And finally, on this point, you need to seek support from your peers. A lot of us do not speak to our peers about stuff. We don't talk to them about things. We don't ask for guidance. Some of you know from your law school, your university, some of your peers that have gone on to do amazing things, that have gone on to maybe win scholarships and they've gone on to do their masters in top schools, or they worked in top law firms, or they've done different things. But you just wouldn't reach out to them to ask for guidance, maybe ego, pride, or you don't want them to know that you're not there yet in your life or in your career. It doesn't help. If you need help, you reach out and ask for help, and help will be available unto you. Permit me to speak Bible terms. So seek support from your peers. Sometimes the help you need may not even be from seniors or people who are ahead of you in the profession. No, it could actually be from your mates, people who are around you, people you meet every day, you hang out with daily. It could actually be the ones to help you. So take advantage of those kind of opportunities. I think I'll wrap up by saying that you need to begin somewhere. You cannot build a reputation on what you intend to do. You actually need to take that step. So whatever your dreams are, whatever you want to accomplish in life, you just need to take a step. You need to start somewhere. And if you're able to apply some of the tips that I have shared today on the call or on this webinar, I am hopeful. I believe that you would make your life more meaningful. You would grow very much in your career and you'd be an excellent person. Thank you very much. I think I can take questions now.
Hello, Kelechi.
Yeah, Mr. Tabena. Yes.
Yeah. Are you done?
Yes, I am. I'm done.
Okay, just a second. I just missed out on that. All right, thank you very much, Kelechi. Very interesting session. But before concluding, I think we should take the questions. Yimika, you're still here. I think some of the questions I'm seeing are actually directed at you. So if you just join us, then we'll go through them one after the other very quickly. So we'll start with, so somebody says, good afternoon, what has been your experience with new Wigs advanced candidate in age that took law as a second degree / profession? The odds seem to be stacked against such persons. Kelechi, is this one you want to take a stab at? Oh, Yimika, you want to take that? Okay.
No, I'm happy for Kelechi to take that.
I thought you were going to take it.
I can contribute, but you guys can start.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Tabena, could you ask the question again? I actually thought it was Yimika's question.
It's someone who had a second degree saying that the odds seems to be stacked against people like that.
Yeah.
So they did a first degree before doing law as a second degree. Yeah.
Then age-wise and the likes. Yeah, true.
Yes.
I mean, I would say this. Like I think in one of the sessions, one of the slides, I had said you should amplify your strengths, and people shouldn't really think about you as having a deficiency. So you may have been in, but you typically find that people who come to study law later may have had degrees in communications or philosophy or journalism or something. And I think that those experiences or those qualifications could be very useful to legal practice. You just have to let whoever you're applying to or the prospective employer see the value you're going to bring from the background that you have. So I think it's just to try, make the effort. And sometimes you might not be able to start if you think it's a disadvantage for you, maybe accessing the big law firms. You can actually start somewhere. And I think this is one point I didn't really make in my presentation. You might not be able to start from working in a top firm immediately, but there is always going to be a law firm that can hire you wherever. They might not just be able to pay you the kind of money you want to be paid. They might not be able to expose you to the kind of things you want to be exposed to, but there's certainly always going to be a lawyer wherever you are that would hire you. So you take those small opportunities, or the opportunities you'd call small, you take them, you do your best, you work hard, show your value, and you can move from there to a better place, and then you keep moving, and before you know it, you're in a very good place. I know someone who had a 2-2 from the university and a 2-2 from the law school, and he's working in one of the top law firms today. What did he do? He just chose a niche area of practice, which has to do with, I think, entertainment and technology. And that wasn't an area that a lot of people were interested in. And most of the things he was doing, he just kept writing about them, did a lot of research, was always putting out publications. And then he got to work with a small law firm that used to do that, had a few instructions in that area. But he was one of the key associates in that area. And then before you knew it, he had worked on some good transactions that earned him a place in a bigger law firm. And he kept moving. I know he's moved like maybe 4 or 5 law firms, and now he's in a very big law firm. You see, so it's just to start where you are, take the opportunities you have available, but capitalize on them, maximize the opportunities, and I don't think you would have any limit.
Kelechi, thank you. And I think I agree with you. And I also think that a combination of the stuff that you've given today and Yumika's lecture clearly shows that if you portray yourself as having certain strengths, you might just be the person that someone is looking for, that a law firm is looking for. I do not think that employers generally discriminate in favor of those who have one thing or the other. If you're the right fit for a job, it doesn't matter your age, people will take you. So I don't think that having a second degree or having another degree other than law is a disadvantage. For many people, it could actually be an advantage. There are people who generally even believe that people who have a first degree and then went on to study law are better equipped to practice in the profession. So I would want those who have those kind of background to see it as a plus rather than a minus. And to be honest, if somebody went to school and graduated with a law degree at 20, with another degree at 20, at 26 or so, a person would have qualified as a lawyer, even 30 or more. So I think the most important thing is to aggressively portray yourself properly and look for the job that you think is there for you or that should be there for you. The other question that we have is, if I work in a law firm, but I have tech skills, do I add those tech skills to my curriculum vitae? Yumika, that one is for you.
Okay, so I was actually sending a message that I have to drop off for 4 o'clock, but I will take that one very quickly. I think certainly, especially at a time where law firms are looking I find a few lawyers that
Like-
have those skills, but they're not very many. So one, it's something that can set you apart. Two, it's something that can actually be relevant. If you work with a law firm, they're trying to win over clients in a particular space. Your law firm maybe throws a function to invite some young entrepreneurs in the tech space. You kind of know a bit about that sphere, a little bit, even if it's just to have conversations. You have that as a selling point. So certainly something like that, or any other thing very similar to that, I would say you should include on your CV.
Thank you, Yimika.
Thank
And
you very
just to
much.
add, I think that, you know, the workspace is not just about the everyday work that you do as a law practitioner. There are so many other things that are in the support area that you can bring to bear to the organization that you work for. So different firms have different other areas like their social media handles and all of that. So if you're tech savvy or you have certain qualifications in tech, if you highlight it properly and actually look to show how valuable that particular skill could be to the law firm, I think that should be a plus rather than a minus. Kelechi, do you have anything to say on that one, or do we move to the others?
I think it's sufficiently addressed. Thank you. We can move to the other questions.
Okay, my name is Oluchukwu Gospel Wako, a legally engaged new wig. My question is as regards grades. Is it important or a beneficial factor to include your grades in the qualifications you have? I think you didn't mention that. Also, scholarships, any need to include them in the additional information part of the CV. I want to say a big thank you. I've learned a lot from this session. Now, I would have hit Yimika with that one, but Kelechi, you start, but I can support you.
No, I mean, I think I'm not you. Lots of people are being called to the bar yearly, and law firms have to find a way to trim the number of people who apply. So sometimes you find them say minimum requirement is two to one. So it's good to put in your CV so that, because if you don't put in on your CV your grades, if they're using like an automated system to read out CVs automatically, those might be considered, you know. But if you do not have very good grades, maybe you didn't make a first class or a 2-1, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply for any job. So you can actually prepare your CV without necessarily disclosing your grades. Or if you do disclose your grades, you need to talk about the things that make you an exceptional person beyond your grades. Because like Mr. Tobina said, employers look for things beyond the grades. You could actually, there are some values you could show, you could bring to an organization on your CV, and you just want to have a conversation with you. It could be that you write a lot. So I can tell you for free that most places, most organizations, most law firms need.
Kelechi, I think you're frozen. Okay.
If you put your CV, or you might put your grades, but then be able to show other things you've done that makes you an outstanding candidate.
Thank you, Kelechi. And I think that the first thing that everybody should realize is that the first qualification you have is that you're a lawyer. You know, whether you made a pass or a third class or whatever you made at the university or law school, the first qualification is that you are a lawyer. And there is what I see CVs and I see people who don't put their grades in there, immediately tells me that people are not proud of the grades that they made or confident of their abilities. You know, the grade you make in the university or anywhere else is something that you will live your life through, but it does not define you. And it should not define you. So you must find a way to make your CV appealing such that someone actually wants to give you a chance and listen to you. And you know, we're all practitioners, and we know that the best of us are not those who made the best grades. I mean, the way Kelechi put it is quite clear. It is likely because people haven't had, there are too many CVs to go through. So you try to find a way to find who you think is most deserving of an interview opportunity. But I would encourage people to put in your grades on your CV. Find a way to make your CV appealing. I mean, look at the slides from Unica again, and just structure your CV in such a way that is appealing, and try to portray your strengths, and don't necessarily see what you presume as a weakness as the biggest weakness. And the other thing that happens in practice is, if you find that the type of firms you want to work in have a benchmark that you cannot find yourself situated in, do go ahead and find other firms that need you. Work your way through the system. Once you build a retinue of experience that is required, then people tend to emphasize more the experience over time than the grades that you made. So it's just understanding the dynamics and being able to walk through them. This other one says, "Hi, moderator. Thank you so much for the enlightening session. I'm a new wig working in a full litigation firm as my NYSC PPA, but my future fully expressed in finance, but I have my future fully expressed in finance, investment banking. There's a knowledge gap. What would you advise?" Kelechi.
Yes, I think I have actually addressed this in my
Yes.
in my presentation. Yeah, so I mean, it's great to I don't guarantee that if you're applying to any of the investment banking investment banks or law firms that do things related to investment banking, like capital markets, PE, M&A, you most likely might not get a chance. That's the truth. But you can actually apply to these law firms with your litigation experience, have a chance to get in, just get into the organization, join, and then you can then start working on the kind of instructions that will earn you a place in investment banking. I'll give you an example. PE, if you do private equity, you have a great chance of working in investment banking. If you do finance, core banking and finance, project finance, corporate finance, you have a chance in working in investment banking, capital markets. And these are all areas that law firms, M&A as well. If you do M&A, and these are all areas of law that you find in full service law firms and corporate law firms. So, but you can join those law firms through your litigation experience and then find a way to switch to those areas of law. And then you'll be on your way to an investment bank in a short time. Well, not so short time, it's in the near future.
Look, that's quite instructive. And I think, again, it's you walking your way to where you want to be in life and trying to do everything that gives you that opportunity to get there. So I agree completely that getting yourself into a law firm that does those things, finding a way to start doing those things, get yourself certifications where necessary, find whatever it is that gives you the ability that you need, and then keep applying for that opportunity. And there's nothing that pays as much as also looking for mentors in whatever area that you want to get into. Look for people who do what you want to do, engage them, find out what that industry needs, and keep equipping yourself in that, guys. And then, keep looking for the opportunities too. I'm a new wig and I have an interest in international law practice and development. In your experience, what are the skills, certifications, and programs that I can undertake to set off on my path? Kelechi, I don't know whether you're there. Well, I think international law and development have generally to do with working in international organizations like the United Nations, MacArthur Foundation, and various developmental agencies. I mean, people who like to work in those places, if you can get work in firms that do development work or that do human rights type of work, or even good litigation, you can build a good retinue. And again, network in those spaces, read up a lot about what the requirement is. And then I'm sure, and try to get an internship in those kind of organizations, and then see where that takes you. Nurses, thank you for this. I have an email address I created with a merge of my first name and baptismal name, which is not the same as my middle or last name on the official documents. My question is, will I have to create another email address with my name and surname? I think the email address you have is good. You can create another one that's simpler, but I think the point that was being made was let your email address be a serious looking email address, not sexytobinna@gmail.com, something that is off-putish, but just focus on something that's serious. Then another question that I see, do you think age is a factor in excelling in the legal profession? I don't think age is a factor in excelling in legal profession. To be honest, amongst my classmates, one of the the first person to become a senior advocate already had a first degree in accounting, was already an auditor in America, working there before coming back to Nigeria to start practice. And I think the most important thing is to get yourself a job in the area that you want to practice in, and to focus and apply all the things that Kelechi and Yimika, especially Kelechi, talked about earlier on: diligence, industry, hard work, and determination. And yes, I'm sure you will excel. How do you deal with the problem of a firm that employs only 2-1 when the person had a pass in bar exams? Kelechi, you want to take that?
Yeah, so the question is, how do you
deal with a firm that employs only 2-1 when the person had a pass in the bar exams?
You see, the truth is, I've actually seen people who didn't make very good grades work in some of these law firms, and I'll give three possible ways to achieve that. One could be that you first of all, you need to be sure that you have what it takes to work in some of these places, some of these law firms, because Mr. Tabena can attest to it. Those organizations are very you can do it. You can start by having conversations with some people that work there to be recommended, which is where networking comes in. If you meet someone, let's say you meet someone who works in that law firm, you just tell the person, and maybe the person knows you, knows your capacity. The person can actually attest to your competence and say, you know what, let's just give the person a chance. Might not have the grades to cut to that we require, but let's just give him an interview opportunity. Let's just start with an interview opportunity. And then once you have the opportunity to even speak to the interviewers, you can actually do very well, and then they offer you a place. So one of the challenges most have is that they don't even get invited for interviews at all. So you can leverage your relationships with people that work there to get an opportunity to be interviewed, and then everything else could just take shape from there. The other way might actually be to work in other places, like I've already alluded to. You might not be able to go directly to work in those organizations, maybe with a pass, because again, you're competing with people who have first class, double first class 2-1, double law school. Some even have masters from the UK, some already have JDs from the US. So it's really not always about the grade. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that because they have those good grades, they're better than you are, but the employers have to work with something. So you're up against those kind of people. So how do you then show excellence? Sometimes you might not even be invited for an interview at all. So if you try the first approach, getting someone within the organization to at least give you a chance to be interviewed, and it doesn't work, if the option doesn't work, you can just focus on developing yourself, building your capacity, your experience with other organizations, maybe going through classes, trainings, and the likes. And then you actually might have a chance to work in that organization. And at that point, like Mr. Tobena mentioned, when you're coming in as an experienced hire, nobody cares about your grade. I mean, it could be passed from law school, nobody cares. What they want to see is your experience. If they look at your CV and they speak to you and they know that you've done so much, you have in-depth experience, nobody will ask you what grades you made. They will hire you right away. So those are two possible ways you can, move from making a pass in law school. Like, you're a lawyer, for crying out loud. Don't always think that because you made a pass, you're disadvantaged in life. Not necessarily. You can make good out of, which is why we have this session today, to encourage people who might feel that they are disadvantaged in any way. Always think of yourself as a valuable person. As long as you've added value to your life, it's only a matter of time. Other people will see the value you're bringing and give you a chance. So
thank you, Kelechi, for that. And then someone is saying, from what you said, one may have to decide what area of law to specialize in. Can you give any guidelines towards choosing an area of law practice to settle in?
well, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to deciding what area of practice to specialize in. And again, I don't really advise people to specialize too early. For instance, I told you I did litigation for 1 year. I worked with a small law firm for 5 months, and then I went to KPMG. And at KPMG, I was doing core tax, like mostly tax, did advisory tax for almost 3 years before I moved to UUB. And now one of the reasons why I actually left KPMG, because people tend to ask me, who leaves KPMG to a law firm? I realized that I think I had specialized too early in my career, and I wanted a chance to do other things. And it's only a law firm, a full service law firm, that gives me the opportunity to do more than tax. So at UUBO today, I do tax, I do private equity, M&A, sometimes I do mining and general corporate advisory. So here you have a chance to pick from various practice areas. You can choose to do tax and energy, on project finance, you can choose to do tax and capital markets. So you don't have to specialize too early. But if you want to specialize, sometimes it's just the opportunities that are available. And I don't know if people believe in predestination, that God can actually order your steps. I'm a Christian. I believe that God can actually order one step. You might not know what he's doing, but he's preparing a way for you. And that's how I usually talk about my life. I did not know I wanted to do tax. I didn't do tax in school. But because I didn't get a job in a top law firm, KPMG was willing to hire me without any experience. I went into the graduate trainee route, but because I had the grades. And that's how I started doing tax. And now I realize that we have very few tax lawyers in Nigeria, and some Mr. Tobin can attest to it. And so you're now a very valuable person because you're doing tax. And that was how God directed my path. So you could actually trust God to direct your path, and you choose an area of law that will bring you fortune in the future. If you don't follow that approach, you can just think about what you love. If you do love advocacy, you love to speak to people, you love to be, then dispute resolution is your thing. You have to be a court person, you have to do litigation. So you always want to be out there, you want to be in the media, in the news stuff. So just sometimes it's just about what you have interest in. It's not someone's place to advise you on what you love. It's your place to know what you like. Do you like to see the product of your work lively, like you advise on something and you can see it being done? Then maybe you can do project development and project finance, where you're advising people on how they are building wigs and building, roads and all that. Sometimes, like, it's just about what you want, what you love, but I'm giving you an example of how my own life, the path that my own life took. It might not be the same for you, but one way to go about it is you might not need to specialize early. Wherever you find yourself, take advantage of the opportunities there. If they are doing different things in the law firm, try your hands on different things, and you might just find the one you love the most and focus on that one.
Thank you, Kelechi. That is quite a great answer. And I would always say to people that it's important to be commercially aware of your environment. One of the things that is unique about Nigeria, especially in my own experience, is that the way we're trained to be barristers and solicitors and to generally act as general practitioners, unlike some of the jurisdictions where I practice in England. You find that you're very specialized. In fact, from when you start doing your seats for your training contract, you're being segmented right from that moment. But the reality of that kind of environment is that you have a pipeline of work in every area. So specialization is quite easy, and you can focus on exactly what you want to do. In a place like Nigeria, I think the more you know, the better for you. And then you can have different, maybe 1, 2, 3 areas where you have true space. So Kelechi has just mentioned private equity. He's mentioned taxation. He's mentioned, there are a few areas that you can easily move within. So I agree that it's also important for you to have some broad experience early in your career, before deciding generally where you want to pitch it. But at the end of the day, it's a decision for you to make. And we find our aptitude when we've tried on some things. Most times in legal practice, as Kelechi said, the opportunities that you find actually direct where you end up. The luck you have is that you're equipped to take whatever opportunity that you find. So I think that's all for that. I think there was one more question. Somebody asked about, do you think that your best grades in one of the courses in bar exams play a significant role in where you should specialize in? That's the last one.
Well, I think it does. For one, I know some people who really love corporate law from law school, and I could already tell that this person is going to be corporate lawyers. But some people, they really struggle with corporate law. But you see civil litigation and property law, they excelled in it. So sometimes, like I said, your strengths, some people can easily grasp certain things. For instance, I hated criminal litigation in law school. It was one of the worst things that I did. And it was actually one of the reasons why I didn't make a first class, but I just didn't like it. And I knew that there was no way I was going to be a criminal defense lawyer, a criminal attorney, because I just didn't like it. So I think that if you look through your breakdown from law school and you find that you did very well in certain areas, it could actually be a pointer to where your area, that could be a pointer that's your area of strength, and you might need to actually, amplify that. If you struggle with corporate law in law school and if you can't grasp basic corporate law principles, you can't understand what corporate personality, for instance, mean, or why companies only have to act through resolutions, or you just can't understand, it doesn't make sense to you. You really struggle as a corporate lawyer. So there's really no point. You could, again, I'm not saying run away from challenges. I also encourage people to confront their fears in the face of adversity. You can confront it. If you really want to do it, you can do it. A lot of people hate mathematics. A lot of lawyers hate mathematics so much. But I've seen lawyers who stood their grounds, decided to do an MBA where they had to do mathematics and they excelled in it. Some decided to do tax and accounting like I am, and we are confronting mathematics on a daily basis and conquering it. So I'm not saying run away from challenging areas and only go to areas where it's easy for you, but I'm saying that if you do realize you have certain propensities to certain areas, and you're proficient in some things, then focus on those areas, and rather than having to struggle in areas that are not clearly your forte. So I think that's the response I would give that question. And Digis, I can help me on that one.
Kelechi, no, that was a very nice one. I'm just going to say that we have a criminal law training coming up in 2 months' time, and I want to make sure that you get invited for it, so that when you start building an interest now. I'll be happy. You might find it very fascinating now. Who knows? But so. Yeah, I think that was well taken. The last of the questions we've just taken, I just want to say a very big thank you to you, Kelechi, for your time today. And I just want to say to the participants that when people like Kelechi come to deliver these trainings, they come at no cost to the MBA. It's just because of their love and desire to help see their colleagues grow and evolve. And Kelechi, what a brilliant presentation you gave today. I picked up a lot from it myself, and I can imagine that the delegates picked up a lot too. So thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll invite you very soon to be a member of faculty on another faculty. So thank you, and God bless you. I thank the president of the MBA for having stayed through today's session, and I thank all the delegates for participating today. Thank you. God bless you all. We're back again on Friday. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.